Can you stay out on this condition? Can you stay out?
Yeah.
Formula One costs money, and sometimes to have enough money to race, teams need to take on drivers who will pay the bills. And it's in this situation where we find our paid drivers. They're usually pretty rubbish in terms of skill level, but bring in so much sponsorship money, teams can't help but keep them. And over the recent years, we've actually had quite a few join the sport. And you can't help but admit it's somewhat ruining Formula One. Sergio Perez's father has recently had this to say about Checo. I am not Mr. Stroll. I do not have the money to buy a Formula One team. Checo is there for himself. This is funny because it implies that Sergio Perez has a seat on his own merit.
The curb, and it's a weird one, wasn't it?
Look further back, Perez heavily into the wall.
It gets tricky. You go onto the intermediate tyres and it disappears through Mirabone. As I say, lost the rear. Gets tagged from behind, yes he does.
Which is certainly not the case. I mean, sure, Papa Perez may not be Mr. Stroll, but Checo is funded by the world's 8th richest man, Carlos Slim, a Latin American tech billionaire. So I'm sorry if I say that retaining a Formula One seat is a hell of a lot easier when you're backed by $78 billion. Yeah, that's billion with a B. So Papa Perez, you may not be Mr. Stroll, but your son certainly has a Mr. Stroll of his own. And as for that meaning he's not able to afford an F1 team, with that amount of money, you could buy the Red Bull F1 team 25 times over and still have billions left to enjoy yourself.
Skyler, where is the money?
Actually, speaking of, Perez, you want to sponsor the channel maybe? And talking about sponsors, I quickly have one little thing for you. Do you like this hat? It's official Ferrari merch, and if you want to get yourself some official F1 merch, V12RS provides it. They've also partnered up with me to give you a 10% discount with code DanNoSkill10, and 10% of anything you buy goes towards the channel, which massively helps me out. So if you've got a bit of spare cash and you can justify doing it, I would massively appreciate it. Anyway, back to the video. But let's give Perez a bit of a break, okay? Maybe you can sit and have a Kit Kat. Oh wait, but actually talking about Kit Kat, they are one of his sponsors, and
the world's biggest food company has agreed a sponsorship deal with Formula One. A senior executive told Reuters that the deal with Nestlé's Kit Kat brand had been struck.
Ah, shit. Well, that's starting to make a lot more sense now. It's okay for Sergio Perez, though. Don't worry. We've got some saving grace for him, because he's not actually the only pay driver in a top team. Pro bottler of race starts Lando Norris also started out as a pay driver. But Lando may be one of the few good, if there is such a thing, pay drivers out there. And I don't just mean in terms of his racing being good. I mean in general, his ethics are at least better than that of Lance Stroll's. To get Mr. Think Different himself into Formula One, Norris's multi-millionaire father is estimated to have paid around $44 million to buy his way into the McLaren team. Just saying, if my dad paid that much and then saw my race starts be as bad as Lando's, he would probably have chucked me out the second story window of a building. But it might be a bit confusing as to why McLaren of all teams would need this money. However, when Norris came in, you've got to remember the absolutely diabolical era we were in for a McLaren team. You had this guy right here completely depressed out of his mind, wanting to just quit Formula One and do anything else. Even dropping out the Monaco Grand Prix to go race IndyCar for the weekend. And also, it had just come out of the era of GP2R looking engine.
The engine was going much slower than before.
So it's safe to say that with all these problems McLaren have been facing and finishing on the lower half of the Constructors' Championship, they wouldn't exactly be seeing the amount of money they have been in recent years. So their finances were probably closer to that of my F1 manager teams than of a thriving race car business. I wonder if their finances are also similar to that god-awful Jaguar rebrand. That's a whole different topic. Anyway, McLaren essentially let Lando buy his way into the team and grab himself an F1 seat to raise some money for them. But then then once they did that, they realized he was actually half decent. I'm not even joking. When Lando joined, he went on a bit of a rampage. Like, he was half decent. He was near Carlos Sainz. He was putting in some good performances, scoring points. And in 2021, he was offered the seat on his own merit. And he went to McLaren and went, look, I know I was a pay driver to start with, but I want you to pay my dad back that money. I want to be in F1 because I'm a good driver, not because I'm bringing finance to the team. Now, don't get me wrong. It's like Dr. House levels of following a moral compass.
Why should I argue? You just overruled me.
Enough! Get a pony or a watermelon farm.
But it still is following some sort of moral compass. It's some kind of ethics to not wanting to be labelled as a pay driver. And now he is in F1 on merit, so fair play to Lando Norris. But actually, who cares? Why is it important to be in Formula 1 on merit? What's the big deal with it? Well, the fact of the matter is, there are plenty of drivers in junior series who are being left out because of these pay drivers. Like, you had Lance Stroll skip the entirety of F2 to get straight into F1. Sure, he had a good F3 season, which was funded by his dad. More on that up here. And that meant that, like, whoever was in F2 that year performing well wouldn't have even got a look in at Williams anymore.
No.
You've got people completely hogging the seats. Like, I'm sorry, but Perez, Magnussen, I hate to say it, Daniel Ricciardo.
Daniel Ricciardo.
They all overstayed their welcome a little bit purely because they're a big name, they bring in money, they're a safe pair of hands, whatever. They've already got that F1 marketability, so they're staying in or they're pay drivers. So it's taken drivers like De Vries, who we all thought was deserving of at least a chance in F1. It took him ages to actually get that shot again.
De Vries behind on a half lap.
Oscar Piastri, who we've seen was an amazingly promising rookie, he's had to sit on the sidelines for a year. Now you've got Franco Colapinto, who Red Bull are eager to get into their academy whilst he's a free agent. He's also just sat on the sidelines, and he's a rookie with loads of promise. So Sergio Perez is essentially stopping that deal from happening just by his existence in the team. And you don't even have to mention Felipe Drugovich. That guy won F2 Championship in 2022, which should ideally score you a Formula 1 seat, or at least a try in a Formula 1 car for a couple races. But no, Lance Stroll has been sat in that seat for ages, and I'm going to get to him. Just don't even let me go off yet. But basically, if your dad's an oil baron, you get moved up through F2 quicker than those who are performing well. And F1 did try and combat this by introducing the super license system. And let's hear from an advocate of that system as to why it's so good.
I think the system is to, keep the guys that don't deserve to be there, like, from just like buying their way through the junior series and getting to F1. It makes like the guys that win deserve and earn their spot to get there, and I think it's great. I think it's good to see the best guys that win the series leading up to F1 get to F1. That's I think that's the idea behind it. So yeah.
Okay, I've been holding my tongue too long now. I just can't do it anymore. Why is this? Left-footed, blind, moronic, anger issues, short bus, racing experience of a mole rat, half-assed, lazy, Canadian dishwasher still in Formula 1. We've had some terrible pay drivers. We had Kartikeyan, the cucumber who couldn't win a race even if everyone else's engines were left at the factory. We had Latifi, who, while being the greatest Formula 1 driver ever, let's be honest, he did crash the car at every given opportunity he could. And if he wasn't spending his time in the wall, he was spending the time at his fridge eating his massive Nutella sponsorship. I can't really blame him. And let's be completely honest, when he was partnered with George Russell, he looked like he was slower than a ham sandwich.
¿Quieres?
And Albon was also destroying him. But, and this is an absolutely massive but, at least they left Formula 1. They realized, okay, I've had my go. I might not be the greatest. Sure, sometimes the teams also had other people they wanted to bring in, but they eventually left and were done with it. Lance Stroll has stuck around like a little parasite that sucks away the opportunities of better drivers than him.
You can't keep getting away with it! He can't keep getting away with it!
It's just hilarious because his dad has manufactured his career the entire time. In Formula 3, and I've done a deep dive on this, but I'll quickly run through it now. He was always given the best equipment, the best teams. His teammates were even pretty much told not to bother fighting with him during some races. At least that's what they've came out and said after the fact. And his results were absolutely incredible for it, but Prema Racing always dominate because they have the best engineers. They cost the most to go into. They bring you the new parts, the new chassis, chassis, everything. It's just absolutely insane. Then his dad's invested in Williams. They've put out this statement for him that, like, when he was racing against Massa, Felipe Massa was performing at pre-2010, his best levels yet. So it made Lance look absolutely incredible when he scored, like, a podium at Baku. When you're fighting last year of his career, Felipe Massa, he is not going to be performing at pre-2010 levels. At first, it looked like he was going to beat the expectations, but since then, it has just absolutely gone downhill.
Komt hij op zijn achterwiel terecht.
In 2019, he was beaten by Perez, who we already established isn't an amazing Formula One driver, by 31 points. That year, he crashed into Norris in Spain, and his biggest achievement of that year was finally ending a 14-race streak of going out in Q1. Then 2020, he doesn't even improve. He gets beaten by Perez by 50 points in a much better car, a race-winning car. Bottled his chance at Italy to actually win a race.
Why are you running?
With the whole red flag stuff and just an awful start from Stroll. And he was definitely in a much faster car than the winner of that race too. Then he had more crashes like Russia with Leclerc. And still, Perez, who was performing probably one of his best seasons ever, was dropped in favor of Stroll because his dad owned the team. 2021, Sebastian Vettel, during his probably most depressed era ever, where he's dropped from Ferrari, he's got very little motivation because his only dream to win with Ferrari wasn't realized, and still gets 9 more points than Stroll in what wasn't a good car. Then the next year, 2022, they bring a slightly better car. Stroll doesn't even improve against his teammates and gets beaten by 19 points. Then Alonso comes in what is the best Aston Martin we've seen, outscores Stroll by 132 points. So arguably Stroll's worst performance in comparison to a teammate ever. Stroll somehow still fucks up even with a good car for quite a large chunk of the season. Alonso, for example, gets 8 podiums. Stroll doesn't even get 1, still gets to keep his seat. And even this year, with a pretty rubbish car, Alonso's made the difference is 38 points clear of Lance Stroll, and all Lance has to show for it is beaching the car on the fucking formation lap and still crashing all the time. Never in Formula One has a driver been allowed to be decimated so much by his competitors and still be in the sport. I mean, normally dads don't own the team either, but you get the idea.
Good afternoon.
He is literally hogging the seat, and yet he still has the audacity to say that about the super license system.
You know, I think it's good to see the best guys that win.
He knows he has gained so much from this broken system, and he's like rubbing it in our faces. It's insane. Either that or he really is just stupid and overestimates his abilities. There is a problem with paid drivers. Thank God, though, we do have some rookies coming onto the grid for 2025. It's going to actually be really exciting to see how they perform and if they can exceed our expectations. Because last year, there were some absolutely washing up liquid level drivers who are keeping their seats. Guangzhou. And I do get it. Formula One is an expensive sport, so you're always going to have some of these pay drivers come through. Every driver technically is a pay driver because it costs so much to get through Junior Series. However, I hope Lawrence Stroll can recover from whatever brain injury he's suffering from.
Oh, a dollar!
And finally just put his son in a different team and bring in some better F1 drivers. Hopefully push Aston Martin forward. Also, I hope Carlos Slim just goes bankrupt by donating all of his money to me. What do you think? Are we doomed to have paid drivers? If you did enjoy, make sure you subscribe and leave a comment telling me your thoughts. I really appreciate, by the way, to the channel members who help support the channel. It massively helps me out as I'm trying to get this thing up and running. So have a good day and goodbye.